One of the rules of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin's on a need to know basis. You have to need to know about Bitcoin before you'll open your mind to it. It's a paradigm shift. And I would refer to it as digital energy. If you can transfer something without an intermediary, then you can store something without an intermediary. So the killer app of Bitcoin is the store of value in cyberspace. And what's that worth? There's about $900 trillion worth of wealth in the world, and about half of it is used for its utility value. So there was this dream in the economic community of perfect money, and it was impossible to create perfect money or clean, sound money until the invention of the internet, combined with the invention of public-private key cryptography, combined with the invention of semiconductors. And so Bitcoin represents the engineering of perfectly sound money.
Imagine owning something so resilient that it could preserve your wealth for 100 years, free from corruption, untouched by politics, and immune to inflation. Michael Saylor considers this as the perfect money. He sat down with Trish Regan to reveal why he thinks Bitcoin could soar to $13 million in our lifetimes. Let's dive into Saylor's predictions and the bold strategy that's turning MicroStrategy into a Bitcoin powerhouse.
One of the rules of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin's on a need to know basis. You have to need to know about Bitcoin before you'll open your mind to it. It's a paradigm shift. And I would refer to it as digital energy. But if you think about it, the first time we figured out how to channel energy in cyberspace, it's just as profound as if you went to somebody in 1800 and said, one day we're going to have this clean, silent electricity, and you're not going to be able to see it or touch it, but it's going to power every single machine in your factory, and it's going to power everything in your house. And you would think, I don't get it, I don't need it. And until someone shows you what it can do, and until you get to the point where you do need it, you're not going to embrace a new form of energy. And so MicroStrategy didn't really need Bitcoin until 2020. And then during the COVID lockdown crisis, we realized that all of our capital was kind of a melting ice cube. We had a lot of money that was generating 0% interest, losing 15 to 20% of its value a year. So we had a need to know. And then we started thinking, maybe there's something else we can invest this money in. And we discovered Bitcoin, which I think is digital capital. I mean, the most powerful application of digital energy is capital. So there was this dream in the economic community of perfect money, and it was impossible to create perfect money or clean, sound money until the invention of the internet, combined with the invention of public-private key cryptography, combined with the invention of semiconductors. And so Bitcoin represents the engineering of perfectly sound money. And it was only possible once those three technologies advanced, and Bitcoin came along, and Bitcoin learned from the failures of the 40 before it. And it was the first truly decentralized crypto monetary network. And it was lucky because it just had the right monetary policy, which is absolute scarcity, 21 million. And it had the right frequency, a block every 10 minutes, the right bandwidth, the right protocols. And, when it was launched in January 3rd, 2009, did we know it was perfect? No, nobody knew it was perfect. In fact, it didn't trade for a year and a half almost. And the first time it was used for transactions was Pizza Day around May of 2010, where somebody bought 2 pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoin. Satoshi figured out not just how to send $1 million from New York to Tokyo without an intermediary, but how to send $1 million forward in time 30 years without an intermediary. If you can transfer something without an intermediary, then you can store something without an intermediary. So the killer app of Bitcoin is the store of value in cyberspace. And what's that worth? There's about $900 trillion worth of wealth in the world, and about half of it is used for its utility utility value. People buy assets for their utility. They buy houses and buildings and boats and planes and pieces of art because they want to use them, look at them. But the other half of that wealth is assets that are purchased as a long-term capital investment or as a store of value. So $450 trillion of the world is long-term capital. So when you start to ask the question, where do the 8 billion people on the planet and where do the 300 million corporations on the planet, where are they going to store their capital if they don't have recourse to the United States and, property on the Upper East Side? The conclusion you come to is, I'm going to put my money in cyberspace. And so Bitcoin's real use is it's digital property in cyberspace. It is cyber Manhattan. It is a place where you can store your capital and give it to your great-grandchildren. And you know that you're not going to be taking risk against a bank as a counterparty or another company or country or currency or culture. When you don't want to take risk, when you don't want to make an investment, when you don't want to bet on the direction of the commodities market, when you just want to store some money for 100 years and forget about it, well, you put it in the safest bank in the universe. And
quick reminder.
So far, we've seen how Michael Saylor's journey took MicroStrategy from a traditional software company to a Bitcoin powerhouse, all on the belief that Bitcoin is truly perfect money. But what's next for this digital fortress? Michael believes that Bitcoin's value could soar to unprecedented heights, creating a legacy asset immune to traditional risks. And with predictions of $13 million per Bitcoin by 2045, there's still so much more to unpack. Stay tuned, because Saylor is about to dive into how Bitcoin's scarcity and security could shape the future of global wealth. You won't want to miss it.
It is the bank that's of choice of the smart money in the world. And will it be banned? You couldn't know that for 15 years, but the IRS legitimized it as property in 2014. The SEC approved a host of Bitcoin ETFs in January of 2024. Today, it's held by nearly 100 publicly traded companies. Every major regulator has certified it as a commodity, not a security. That was a judgment by the former head of the SEC under Trump, and that's the judgment of the current head of the SEC, Gary Gensler. So it's not getting banned. And that takes us to the third question is, will it be hacked? And Satoshi's got about $70 billion in a bunch of wallets that any hacker could have if they could crack the code, and it's been there for 16 years and nobody's cracked the code. It hasn't been hacked, and the reason it hasn't been hacked is because it's defended by a wall of digital energy, about 730 exahash. That's more computer power than all of the computers that Amazon or Microsoft or Apple could, working jointly together, could generate. So it is the strongest wall of computer power in the world, stronger than any nation state can muster, stronger than any company can muster. And that computing power, combined with the fact that there's approximately $800 billion of actual money deposited in this bank over the past 15 years, combined with hundreds of millions of holders, combined with about almost 20 gigawatts of electricity, which is like 20 full-on nuclear reactors. 20 gigawatts is more electrical energy or more pure energy than drives the entire U.S. Navy. That's how much power it is. So Bitcoin's really defended by power, a lot of power in political, economic, digital, and electrical form. And there's no way to finesse it. You can't kind of spoof it or trick it. You just need 10 times as much computing power as exists on the surface of the earth in order to crack it. That's why no one's cracking it. Bitcoin right now is spreading very rapidly as digital capital, and it's digitally transforming the capital markets. And BlackRock is an example of one form. MicroStrategy is another company digitally transforming the capital markets. And yet still 95% of the Bitcoin is held in self-custody by Bitcoiners, and it's not in those traditional areas. So And when you look at Bitcoin's growth over the past 15 years, it's been growing more than 100% a year for the first decade or so. And for the last 4 years, it's been appreciating about 50% a year in ARR. I think it's 50% a year in ARR, and it's 50 vol, which is like 3 times the volatility of the S&P and 3 times the performance of the S&P index. Over the next 21 years, I think it will grow faster than the S&P, and it's going to grow to the point where it's about 7% of the world's assets. Right now, it's about 0.1% of the world's assets. And I think that it will gradually approach, but it will never be as big as the S&P index or equities. It won't ever be as big as real estate. But in that world where it decelerates from 50% down to 20%-ish, it will appreciate from 65 or 70,000 up to 13 million a coin in my base case. And that amounts to about a 29% ARR on average over the 21 years. And, when it's half the size of the S&P, it'll still be twice as volatile, probably performing 50% better, because it's a 24/7, 365 asset. It's subject to global chaos and global capital flows, and it doesn't have all the risk factors of property or the risk factors of equity to hold it back. Bitcoin's like 50 vol, 50 ARR, and the S&P's more like 12 to 14 ARR, 14 vol. So if you want 12 vol, 12 ARR, you would just buy a diversified equity index. You'll get 1/4 the return, you'll get 1/4 the volatility, and some people like that. If you're going to buy a 50 vol asset, first of all, you shouldn't buy it unless you're going to hold it for the long term. Like a short period of time to hold it is 4 years. A middle period of time is 10 years. The right time horizon is the rest of your life. If you have money that you need to give to your children in 4 weeks, don't buy Bitcoin with it. If you have money you want to give to your children in 40 years, definitely buy Bitcoin with it. In 40 years, Bitcoin is going to be worth a lot more. In 4 weeks, there's no telling what it'll be worth. So
Saylor's bold vision for Bitcoin isn't just a financial forecast, it's a call to rethink our understanding of money. His insights challenge us to consider Bitcoin not only as an asset, but as the perfect money that could reshape economies. Whether you're a crypto enthusiast or just Bitcoin curious, this interview offers valuable food for thought about the future of finance and wealth. So, stick around for more insights from the leading voices in the crypto world. There's so much more to discover.